Good morning, everyone. I'm happy that you're already talking. You will do lots of that in this session. And I would very much like to welcome you to this quite special session at this year's World Water Week. It's special because we have a specially invited guest for the Young Professional Day. And we're also live streamed, so welcome to those of you following online. And I also want to say that if you find yourself in this room and you are over 35, it's not wrong. You don't have to leave, but you can stay. But you might find your mindset a little bit challenged talking to all these bright young minds. So, my name is Elin Weiler. I work at the Stockholm International Water Institute, organizing the World Water Week, and also with the Swedish Waterhouse, who have been part of organizing this young professional session for a couple of years now. And I'm very honored that the co-conveners of this session, the Water Youth Network and the Asian Development Bank, have asked me to chair this first part of the session, at least. The aim of today's session is that we want to come out with some concrete actions for in how youth can promote and advance the access to water and sanitation and hygiene, especially focusing on in informal settlements. But these actions will also be input to the UN Assembly that's deciding on the next generation of the development goals. So we've divided the session into three. So you will have three very good inspirational talks by distinguished speakers, and that's setting the scene for the roundtable discussions that you will have later on. And then we will also invited a panel of senior and youth experts that will reflect upon these actions, and then we'll have a summary that's gonna explain to you how the work that you're doing here today is gonna be taken further on in the next step. I'm also very honored to introduce our first speaker, who's Professor Jon Briscoe, whom some of you have already had the pleasure to listen to in the opening session. Professor Briscoe is the Stockholm Water Prize laureate and a Harvard professor and distinguished speaker. He will share some of his personal experiences in implementing water and sanitation management and his commitment to improving lives for people underground. Please, Professor Briscoe.
Thank you, Ellen, and good morning, everybody. I'm afraid I can only be with you for half an hour this morning, and you've heard a lot of lectures. Being a professor, I give lectures. If you want, I can give you a lecture. But I thought it would be more interesting to perhaps make a few comments by way of introduction. I hope to provoke you at the early part of the morning about issues of water and development. And what would give me the greatest pleasure is after I've talked for 10 minutes to see hands waving saying, "You're completely wrong. That's wrong. Why don't you do it a different way?" So let me start just with a couple of things. First of all, Ellen's talked about solutions for those who are unserved through small communities, and typically we think about this through informal organizations, through NGOs and elsewhere. So I'd like to see here who gets their water supply from an NGO or a small water organization. Who gets it from a big utility? So who thinks that the people in the periphery of the developing world should get it from a small organization? I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Who thinks it should come through the same sort of organization that you have. A large, and a lot don't think you should get it through anything. So how should we do this? How should we be getting water supply and sanitation? Is this a job for small community-based organizations, or is it a job, as has been the case for most of us, that you go to your tap? I live in Boston. It serves 3 million people. I live in New York. I live in Stockholm. I don't worry that much about my water supply. I have to pay the bill. I have to turn off the tap. But I want something that functions well for me. I don't necessarily need a specialized organization for this. So this is a first question about how we go about getting it. And I would like to come into that because if you are anything like the students I have at Harvard University, the undergraduates, everybody wants to start their own NGO for providing water to people in rural Africa and people in urban settlements. And that, to me, is a bit of a contradiction. It's not how you get it. It's not how you think you should get it, but it is what you will be doing. And I'd like to talk a little bit about roles within the old world of making utilities work more effectively. I hope some of you went yesterday to the Industry Award to my great friend Neil MacLeod and what used to be called the Durban Water Utility that's provided many, many millions of people with water supply by incorporating innovation into an existing utility. So that's the first question. Second question is, if you are the Prime Minister, let's take a couple of countries. So we've got a group. Who are you all from with the red blazers? Singapore. Okay, so Singapore's. So let's go back. Is there another group of developing country people? Who else is from developing country? What countries? Yeah? Nepal. Okay. Mexico. Good. China. Brazil. Okay, very good. So if you are the president of one of these countries, or the president of an African country, or president of India, and you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning thinking about water, sometimes it happens. China, we had someone from China. What does your president wake up? If he wakes up at 3 o'clock in the morning thinking about water, what does he think about? Well, that's very generic. What do you mean we're short on water?
We're short of water in lots of ways. The people in poor area can never get enough water, and there are polluted waters everywhere, so there are lots of severe problems.
So there's severe problems in China, and perhaps the biggest problem of all is that you have the North China Plains, in which you have dramatic reductions in groundwater. You have much of your economy in the north. There's not enough water. There's some water in the south. How am I going to make my country, a sustainable country, have water for everybody? This is an existential question for China. For India, similarly. For Nepal? So what's your water problem? So you have a lot of water, but it's very difficult to access it. Correct. What else do you worry about if you're the Prime Minister of Nepal?
Thank you.
For related to water. So how is Nepal ever going to develop? What resources does Nepal have to develop?
I told you it's a lot of politics. So there are a lot of people.
Pardon?
It's a lot of politics, internal politics, and there's a lot of issue with the finance.
Yeah.
We are doing a big basin transfer projects, but there's so much conflict in the communities, and then it took so many years for it to complete. And also, I told you already, it's also economy. So water is really neglected sector, and the companies already collapsed like 20 years back.
Okay, so you have a sort of a generic problem of the state, but you also have an enormous resource. You have a water resource that can be the power. Your little country next door to you, Bhutan, has become rich out of hydropower development, and you haven't managed to do it. So you've got water and power together. The point I'm trying to make on this is that there are very few countries in the world in which you have actually developed decent institutions, decent politics. You have managed to have an economy of a certain level in which you can't, to a large degree, solve the water problem. The water problem is not, and this maybe we can talk a little bit about the MDGs, is not so much, in my view, a primary problem. So how many people what proportion of people in the world don't have access by the WHO definition to an adequate supply of drinking water? Here we can do it by hands. 50%. 30%. 10%. Come on, guys. What, 70%. So what's the number? 10%? What was the number 30 years ago? The number 30 years ago was about 30%. So despite the sense that Ellen conveyed, there's this tremendous problem. We've made enormous progress in providing water supply to people around the world. Where has that, what's the source of that supply? Is it the MDGs and Swedish aid and World Bank projects and Bill Gates and NGOs? Who is it? Come on, come on, come on. I'm going to leave if people don't. Where is it? Where's that come from? So it's come from government, yeah. So which governments have been able to do that? China, 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 right? And the others. So how did China pay a lot of attention to the MDGs? Come on, we've got Chinese. Did you pay a lot of attention to the MDGs? No, probably no attention. What China decided to do was grow, and with a lot of the issues that the ladies raised. But if you can grow, if you can be an economy that has jobs, has industry, has income, you can solve a lot of these problems. So let me switch to one other thing. Yep, good. You'll have to shout. Natural growth. I'm not sure what natural growth is, but economic growth. So development aid can play a part. It plays a small part. But it's very interesting if you look at development aid. Who gets development aid?
I think the most poor people.
And who used to get development aid if you go back 30 years ago?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
So India, China, the big countries got development aid.
The BRICS.
Brazil, the other countries got development aid. And then they grew. Not really out of the development aid, but out of their own efforts, and now they don't get development aid anymore. And they grow, and they have a very different set of priorities. Their priority is growth, general development of the economy, and it is not a set of targets set by somebody sitting in New York. It is a set of targets that are jobs, environment, well-being of the people, the whole panoply of things that come from that. So I think there's an interaction between those. But let me just give you perhaps one last to try and wake you up a bit. So I'm a professor. So we did a project this last year at Harvard University. And we did a project on looking at five of the many large river basins in the world, and looking at the management of these river basins. And these are river basins on which the countries in which they exist depend very, very fundamentally on them. So we started with the Indus Basin. Anyone from Pakistan or India? So the Indus Basin is a large basin, as you probably know, in northwest India, around which the whole country of Pakistan lives. Tom Pinella here from ADB knows it very, very well. A whole country lives on a river basin, incredibly vulnerable as to how that country is going to survive with that river basin. So when the president of Pakistan or the prime minister wakes up at night, he's probably firstly thinking that there's going to be a coup, and secondly, if there's not a coup, he's thinking about the energy and water from this river basin. And he's thinking about, what can I do? So think Indus Basin. A second basin that we dealt with, I mentioned a bit in the opening speech, the Mississippi Basin. It covers half of the United States. Almost all of the heavy traffic or heavy navigation comes through the Mississippi. The whole heartland of industry, of agriculture, discharges its waste through the Gulf. You have this enormous oil industry which depends out in the south. This is an absolutely central piece of the functioning economy of the United States, and it's a water issue. The Colorado River in the western United States, we have all of California, all of the southwest United States living on this river system, and if you follow the news, you see a river system under tremendous stress tremendous difficulty, and tremendous questions, therefore, about the state of agriculture in the United States, about how Los Angeles, Nevada, San Francisco, and other cities are going to survive. We also looked at the Murray-Darling Basin in Australia, which is, again, a river system under tremendous stress, tremendous productivity, but having to deal with a new set of challenges. And lastly, we looked at the San Francisco River in Brazil, a big river in an arid part. How do you use this as a platform for economic growth? And what we did was we put together a team of about 30 students from around the world, from all sorts of different disciplines. And we did a year-long project. And the fascinating thing about this was, the most difficult part of this project for us as the faculty was to, should I say, restrain the enthusiasm of youth. Because everybody came into the room knowing that everything was screwed up. This is one of the great ironies of life. Most people here have never known what it is not to have water out of a tap. Very few of you have known what it is not to have electricity. Very few of you have known what it is not to have food. And yet, you think the whole system's screwed up. And it is screwed up for some people, and it's vulnerable for others. But people then pass from that to the system's all screwed up, it needs to all change. So the very interesting thing, and this is a group of graduate students, postdocs, sophisticated people, the very difficult first part of this was to tell them, please stop and think. Don't say, everything that was done was wrong, it must change, it must be done in a different way. So we made them spend the first 4 months. There were teams working on each of these river basins to actually look at the basins and see, how come the Mississippi River is the way it is? How come the Murray-Darling Basin is the way it is? How come the Indus is the way it is? And what you will see, of course, is that this problem did not arise yesterday. These are generally, in large river basins, entities of historical significance. They've been there for many, many centuries, and societies have built around them. The Yangtze River in India, the Yangtze River in China, the Yellow River, the Ganges, even the newer ones like the Mississippi. And when people first came to live in those river basins, they faced a series of very obvious problems. They faced the problem, for example, on the Mississippi, how do we move our produce down? And there were rocks, and so you built little locks so that large ships could get up. There were problems of floods, so they dealt with the floods. And by the time you get to 2 years ago, where we've dealt with this, there's then the most massive amount of infrastructure and institutions which are built up around each of these institutions to deal with very, very real problems that existed and that people dealt with. And the challenge now is, and I would put this as the dialectic of development of water, is every time you solve a problem, there's going to be another problem which arises. And this is not because you were stupid, it was not because you didn't know what you were doing, but it is simply that there is a process where you solve one thing and another thing's going to come up. So we spent the first 3 months with great difficulty getting the students to get out of the box, which in the youth business is, it's great, they're indignant and they're impatient. Indignation and impatience are limited virtues in my view. I think the ability to be more mature, and you're not young people, to sit back, to understand why things are the way they are, to understand what the real challenges are, and then to try to formulate in the context, not of a vacuum, but the context of the institutions we have, the reality we have, how do we go about addressing the next set of issues. What we then did with our students, which was a true revelation to them, because they'd all basically spent their lives in universities, they had all heard about how terrible all the engineering organizations were. If you're in the United States, the Army Corps of Engineers has just destroyed everything there is. And so we sent them down to spend a month, for this case, on the Mississippi River. Who's ever seen the Mississippi River? Or where are you from?
United States, New York.
Oh, from New York. Well, you're a long way from, but you've seen them, so you've crossed it when you went.
Went south. We went on purpose to view it. We were interested in Cancer Mile, a lot of the offshoot of the industry in Mississippi.
So you went down to southern Louisiana, did you?
Yes, that's correct.
So you see, then you get a flavor for this this enormous part of the United States which lives at the mercy of this river.
Absolutely.
And sometimes the river becomes it's always a big river. It sometimes becomes a very, very big river. And so you have this challenge of managing this river, and in particular the river in flood, which causes, I mentioned in the opening speech, this enormous systemic damage to it. And so we sent our students, and they spent a month with the people in the Corps of Engineers in Vicksburg, Mississippi, looking at how do you actually manage this river. And the most amazing thing to me was, after a month, the students come back and they say, oh my God, those guys really know what they're doing. Well, I hope they know what they're doing, because if they don't know what they're doing, this is a large part of the economy of the United States no longer functions. So there's a second thing on impatience and indignance, is don't look at the people like me who have been in this for a long time. And don't, I mean, not me particularly, but don't just look at, oh, they failed, everything's failed. No, no, no. We've had tremendous successes in terms of using water power for growth of industry. Look at Sweden. In terms of improving services for most people in the world. In terms of agriculture, when I was mentioned in my opening speech, the first time I worked outside of my native South Africa, I worked in Bangladesh. Bangladesh was described by Henry Kissinger as the basket case of the world, could never feed itself. Today it's a big food exporter. So all of these old people who haven't done anything, who don't know what they're doing, have achieved an enormous amount. And I think that the challenge, which again, coming back to our project, what we then said to the students is, okay, now you've understood the history. And without understanding the history, you can't understand what to do in the future. And you've seen what the thinking practitioners can actually do. And what they found as well was those thinking practitioners, the operators of the Mississippi River Commission, the people working on the Colorado, the people working on the Murray-Darling, the people working on the San Francisco, are dying for young people with good skills to come in and work in their organizations. Not to come in on day one and say, you screwed everything up, it should all be done like this, it's small is beautiful, water's a human right, all the things you've plucked out of the sort of the blogosphere, but rather to say, I want to be part of a human movement that has improved things dramatically. And in poor countries, I want to help start, I don't want to do it, I want to help start working with those countries so that they can do these projects more effectively. Just the last one I get as a professor, I get this very odd message. I get many, many students coming in and saying, oh, Professor, you had such a wonderful career. What do I have to do to have a career like yours? I said, well, the first 25 years or so, go to the field and do something. 25 years? Oh, my God, but Mark Zuckerman became a billionaire at the age of 25. I want to do it now, and I want to solve it now. To my mind, this is not a very helpful way to go about it. I think you need to get in. We had a group of students recently who wanted to start a ceramic filter project in Uganda. They'd never been to Uganda in their life, never started a filter in their life. And so I said to them, any Ugandans here? I said to them, look, if you look at Uganda, Uganda has done miraculously in terms of its national water utility. And there's a fantastic Ugandan colleague who's done brilliant things. He needs people. Go and spend your year working with William in Uganda, in the Uganda utility. You will learn a world. You will not come back with your website with the smiling babies whose lives you've saved, but you will make a contribution that's a much more mature contribution in getting into organizations which will have duration and will be the organizations for the futures of places like Uganda that actually transform their lives. So I said no lecture, but there we go. That's how it is. So let's hear some, at least some, oh, that's complete nonsense, because otherwise it will not be very interesting. So, Gabrielle, good morning. Yeah, can you take mics, please? So here's Gabrielle, for example, just come in. Gabrielle is the chair of sustainability of one of the biggest construction companies in the world, builds very large hydropower projects, irrigation projects. Gabrielle dignifies my class every year by coming and talking to it. And I promise you, when we start in the class, the idea that some big Brazilian multinational construction company is part of the solution to this is not on the plate. And by the time, you should hear the talk from Gabriel, because by the time Gabriel's spent, there's a long line saying, this is what I want to do with my future. How can I join a company that in this case is making transformative, transforming our water environment, transforming our energy environment, and transforming the future into a much more sustainable future. So bottom line is, don't think that it's, I've got to go out and start my own NGO. Think about organizations that have spread, have capability, and I promise if you talk to Gabriel afterwards here, or if you talk to any of the other people I've met, they will all be just delighted to find young people, not who want to come in and tell you, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that. They're happy to hear that too, but how can you contribute? And contributing to a greater organization of this sort is a much more mature than the impatience of youth is, I must start my own thing. I must start my own thing, I promise you, 99% of them are gone in 2 years. You've gone off, your website's up, and you're working for McKinsey, and nothing else has happened from it. So that's my lesson. But let me hear some questions and responses.
Hi, Professor. Thank you for your speech.
Yeah.
Oh, just stand up. In my native country, Nigeria, what I've found is a lot of organizations are actually very reluctant to change, especially public sector organizations, and that's mainly because they have a lot of self-interest at heart. So whatever projects they want to carry out, if there is no benefit for them on a personal level, there's a lot of reluctance for them to want to do anything. So I'm not sure how effective that approach is going to be in Africa and in places like Nigeria where corruption is very endemic in the system. So I wonder what your thoughts are and if there should be a parallel approach as to...
So tell me what your thought is. So,
sorry?
okay, let me paraphrase. So if I simplify, your thought is put a big black X through the government of Nigeria. It won't ever do anything. And instead, we will have what?
Well, a few proposals are, for example, private sector participation, which is what my company is doing. So that might be an alternative approach, or NGOs or other initiatives that are not dependent on public sector institutions.
What's the NGO dependent on?
Well, I believe they're dependent on donations from private individuals.
So tell me a country that is developed based on donations to NGOs. We could have a long discussion. Your task, you're Nigerian, is not to accept the way in which Nigeria has a particular quality to corruption, I agree. But I can tell you the United States has a lot of corruption. Gabriel is here from Brazil. There's a lot of corruption. To stand aside and say it's corrupt and we will create an alternative so that we don't have to deal with that, in my view, is completely false. As a Nigerian, your job is to get in. Go and run for municipal councillor. Start at the bottom. Start to show that there can be a public service that can function effectively. It's never going to be perfect. None of this is going to be perfect. But standing aside and not getting engaged with that because it's going to be corrupt and it's going to be self-interested. I'm sorry to tell you, do you work for an NGO?
No, I set up my own company. Actually.
Pardon?
I set up my own company.
Yeah, well, an NGO, so do you have your own interests?
I do have my own interests.
Everybody has their own interests. And if you're a private sector company, you cannot function if there's not a government system functioning. You have to have some sort of legal regulatory framework. Again, I come to Gabriel in the front row here. When Gabriel and I first worked in Brazil 30 years ago, Brazil was incredibly badly governed. Is Brazil the world's best governed country today? No, it's not. But do you have levels of regulation, of framework, of system? And who built that? It wasn't an NGO who built it. It wasn't the private sector who built it. It was a society as a whole who demanded that we have a different thing. So your job, and I cannot stand my government is corrupt, therefore I will set up an NGO and it will be an alternative. If the alternative is to make the public system, your political system, function more effectively, good for you. If it's I exit and I will have my own little world like this, it's an illusion. You will make no difference to your country. So go to it. Find, not everybody, we know people in Nigeria who are fantastic people. Nigeria is not a country just of corrupt people. There are corrupt institutions. Transform your country, and you can make it a bigger and better country. And that is a big contribution.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that...
Let me get a question. There's a question.
Yeah, maybe there's one more question, and then we have to move on.
Okay, thank you for your talk. But I was wondering, all these companies, they must have initially started with someone who wanted to start their own little world and start their own ideas. So I was wondering, like, as young people, I suppose, sitting at this table, we're all thinking, we feel a bit as if this is discouraging the creativity that initially starts these companies, which are eventually making change.
Yeah, so that's a good question. And the intention is not to say, don't start your own company. What I would say is, don't start your own company in an idea of, what's your name? Kibika Inc. Kibika's never done anything, but so I live in Cambridge, Massachusetts. The heart of... Pardon?
I live in New Hampshire.
So you get the same thing.
Yes.
Every conference we have, especially at our sister institution, MIT, everybody comes out, I've got my own new company, I've solved the water's problem, the world's water problem, I've got the solution to desalination, I can do something with nothing. This is nonsense. If you get into companies, there are lots of companies with lots of innovation in which they are dealing with the innovation in a more systemic way. So, for example, I mean, I'm not a card-carrying member of GE, for example. But if you ask a startup who's sitting and starting up a particular technology, and this is going to solve the world's problem, I get 50 of those a day. And none of the 50 I've seen in 30 years have ever done it. But if you get into a system in which there is a demand for innovation, so I'm sorry, John Blackmore from Australia, our colleague, is here. Australia has a big water problem. They have a demand for much more effective use of water. So there's a market demand for much more better measurement of water systems, for measuring water in the root zone of plants, for being able to deliver water just when you need it. But it's part of a system. And into that, if you can bring your innovative capacity into that, you can work zillions. If it's innovation, for me to have my little company, for me to be me, for me to feel good about the innovation I've done, I think that there's very little evidence that actually works in this.
Yeah, sir, I see where you're coming from, but I still believe that it's important to have your own ideas. And perhaps if you would like to start your own, then start that, and perhaps others will join, because I believe that that's how things become big eventually. But I do see where you're coming from.
I agree, but start your own. Don't start your own because I believe that the world should have water, therefore I'll start a company. Companies are started to deal with niches where people want to buy things and people need things. And you have to start with that. It can't be that there's a CEDAR grant or there's a grant from Bill Gates that will tell you, do this and you'll change the world. I see very few of those materializing. But I see innovation, and again, I mean, it happens that Gabrielle is here. If you go into some of these big companies, you'll be amazed. These companies are hungry for innovation, but they have huge clients out there. They have clients who need to grow food more efficiently. They have clients who need to innovate in technologies. And if you can do it in those sorts of companies, then you've got a huge multiplier effect which makes that. And then they say, that's great, we're going to do it in some other area. So the only point would be here, not in any sense to suggest that innovation, because a lot of it is about innovation, but self-indulgent innovation. Innovation that I have innovated, I've got my card, I've done this, rather than innovation in service of a need, demonstrated need by people to live a better life.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't think there is time for any more questions, but thank you so much, Professor Briscoe. Our next speaker will explain to us the complexities of water, sanitation, and hygiene in informal settlements. Mr. Thomas Penella is Senior Water Resources Management Specialist at the Asian Development Bank.
Morning, everyone. For the presentation, do I have Anyway, good morning. It's nice to see a full house here. I'll touch upon some of the themes that John raised and try and focus the discussion a bit more into the context of WASH and set the scene for the rest of the morning. I will say that I've been coming to water conferences for some time now, and very few of the problems have gone away or been solved. And in some of the sectors, irrigation, for instance, you come and you keep hearing the same old problem, same old lack of solutions. I'll say the one thing, though, that is relatively new and I find inspiring is the growth of the youth presence and the formalized youth movement. I think this has really mushroomed in the last just recently, even last 5 years. It's a dramatic change, and for me, it's really one of the encouraging things that I take away from these conferences, that you can see engaged people who want to make a difference, who are committed and aren't willing to accept the way things are and want to make a better world for themselves and their next generation. How you go about doing that, I think there are many options. I think we just heard from John, and I had the pleasure and privilege of working for John for a few years in the World Bank. He has his own view, but I think a lot of the things he says are relevant and make us think. And while we question, we shouldn't throw away some things that have worked, but maybe not as well as they could have. So let me talk about WASH and the context in Asia Pacific, and then how we can go about addressing some of these issues. Over 1 billion people live in informal settlements. I think John asked the question, how many people here got up and had water this morning and drank the tap water? How many of you actually worried about needing a place to use the toilet, or have ever faced a situation where there really wasn't a toilet, or you had to practice open defecation? Right, nobody. But how many people were born into that situation? And other question, how many people would choose to continue with that situation, having been born into that situation? Right, none of us. So I'm just trying to say that for all of us here, sometimes it's very hard to think about and really know what these situations are like. But I think the important thing is everybody is here and we're concerned about it and want to do something about it. So over 1 billion people a year in the world live in informal settlements, and obviously WASH issues, sanitation, water supply, hygiene are one of the biggest challenges they face. Especially in Asia, as there's massive urbanization with people coming to cities looking for better opportunities, employment, these problems are getting worse and worse. And WASH issues are particularly challenging. You have a situation where people don't have access to fresh water or sanitation, and at the same time you have people disposing their waste into their surrounding environment, creating an incredibly unhealthy, unhygienic environment, and it's not surprising you get diarrheal diseases, cholera, all of these issues that we know about. Most slum dwellers do not have access to improved sanitation facilities, and also the urban poor, as well as rural poor, in time and money pay much more for water than any of us in the developed world or people with pipe supply. Often these people are reliant on wells that are contaminated, and really any of the water they're going to get is not potable. I mean, I live in Tashkent, Uzbekistan. I haven't lived anywhere where I can drink the water for the last 12 years. So, you know, you drink bottled water. That's not the greatest solution in the world, but many people have to put up with that. So, for Asia, half the population, or half of the people in the world who don't have access to fresh water live in Asia. But as John said, we've made huge progress with the MDGs here. It's fallen from about 28% to 9% by 2013. I think the real challenge for WASH is sanitation. The MDGs will not be met in Asia for access to sanitation, and it'll be well over 2015 before they're met. So we'll see what comes out of the SDGs. We'll hear a little bit about that, but I do think sanitation is really a pressing issue. In Asia alone, there's about 350 million people still without access to improved water, and there's a staggering 1.7 billion that don't have access to improved sanitation. So in Asia Pacific, as well as a lot of the rest of the world, the story's not finished, it's not satisfying, and it's certainly not acceptable. Behind the numbers, I tried to bring this out a bit, and again, there's statistics, and then there are the people who have to live this, and every day trying to wait in line for water, not have a safe place to go to the toilet, and not leading dignified lives. Also, these people generally don't have access to health services, durable housing, and may not have access to education. Also, because most of them are considered illegal settlements, and in fact they are illegal settlements, they don't have access to the civil processes or really any kind of decision making. Young people, especially girls, are most vulnerable to sanitation issues. WHO statistics estimate that 1 in 10 child deaths, about 800,000 a year, are due to WASH-related issues, diarrhea, and proper sanitation. The other issue that's quite big, and one of the big benefits of improved water supply and sanitation, is these children who are sick aren't going to school. This really affects their education, and it ultimately affects their ability to be meaningful, contributing members of society in the long term. I don't need to underscore this enough. Also, in terms of the gender dimensions, WaterAid estimates that 1 in 3 women worldwide risks shame, disease, harassment, rape, just from the fact of not being able to have a safe access to a toilet. So these are serious issues. However, there is much that's been done, especially on the water supply side, to improve this. And as the statistics show, water supply is improving. One thing I'll talk about here is a local initiative that ADB had done some work on. And again, this did work outside the system, but it also worked with the system. This was partnerships between entrepreneurs, community groups, sometimes NGOs, local authorities, and the utilities themselves. And it was part education, but part providing an alternative supply. In 2002, 2003, ADB carried out a study to provide an overview of water supply options outside formal utility networks. Now, the target area of this was urban areas where utilities, because they're informal settlements, people didn't have land tenure, were unwilling to go, or the cost of going there was prohibitive at the time. And for whatever reasons, the formal utilities were not meeting this demand. And it showed that many of these people were getting water, but from in an informal sector of small service providers that had come into the area. Now, quite often, this is through tanker trucks going into areas and people buying water, either in a jug or whatever, and taking it home. But in this case, the study results showed that this concept of small-scale water service providers coming into communities where they would provide a pipe network to the community, fill the void where the regular utilities weren't going in, and in many cases work with the regular utilities to provide service in these areas where the idea was they could provide an interim solution to the communities, and at the same time the main utility would have pressure or come in at a later time to provide more reliable service. What were the results of this? Well, to advance the concept, ADB supported these service providers in 3 countries, in the Philippines, Vietnam, and India through programs 2005, 2008. And they basically helped scale these activities up, provided technical support and finance. What they found was it was a very effective way of meeting basic needs. So what was the advantage of this, and as opposed to the main scale utilities? One, they were quick. They could get a system up and running in 3 to 6 months. They were affordable. People could pay in small amounts or on a daily basis, pay the connection fee by installment. They were very convenient. People didn't queue up in line. They saved a lot of time. They could use this for going to school. They could use it for more productive activities. And it was much more reliable. There was an increased level of service, and importantly, there was expanded coverage, and people who were not getting water previously had access to a reliable supply. And again, this is not through the main scale utility, but quite often was done in conjunction with utility. And I think the other important point is this was done by entrepreneurs, and so people were paying for the service. It was self-sustaining, and money was collected, and people were often paying much less than they had been previously to have a reliable supply. So some of the conclusions from this were the role of small-scale suppliers should be recognized in government as one alternative to bridge the gap where service coverage doesn't exist. The government should encourage formal utilities to work and support these small-scale service providers and help them as an interim service measure to reach communities that they're currently unable to serve. In urban areas, it's high density. The costs of putting the network in are not extreme. It's not a technical issue. It's more an institutional and a finance issue. But however, it should be seen that in most cases, these providers provide an interim solution, and ideally, the main-scale utilities should come into these areas. That's not the topic of this and how that can be done, but I think providing a service that's essentially making up for a failure of service shouldn't be a sustainable solution, but people do need water, and in this case it works. Scaling up sustainable provision of basic water and sanitation services then requires a bit of a paradigm shift. You needed cross-sectoral action. You need consistent support to implement the reforms, and you need innovation. I think that's the hope of everybody sitting in this room, and my hope that innovation doesn't lie with people who've been at it for 30 or 40 years necessarily. It's you people sitting around these tables, and hopefully can work towards that. The recommendations for this is strengthen political leadership through advocacy based on evidence and success. If something is working, politicians will support it. Craft national strategies that respond to needs on the ground. In this case, there was a failure to meet needs, but there was innovative people coming in to do it. Strengthen leadership and accountability for water supply, sanitation, and hygiene. Some people are seeing the progress and are still dismissive that this isn't a real issue, but for millions and billions of people every day, it is a huge issue. Maximize leverage potential of NGOs and private sector. I do think private sector has a big role to play, and NGOs, there are many different NGOs, but they also can help facilitate change and need to be part of the program. create an enabling environment for developing entrepreneurship for private sector and small-scale water and sanitation service providers. It may not be the only solution, it may not be the most permanent or sustainable, but people need water, they need sanitation, and I think our role today in the exercise going forward is thinking creatively about how we can do this, both within and outside the system. But again, I think principle of sustainability is critical to anything that we come up with. Encourage collaboration among different disciplines, regions, stakeholders, and share lessons learned. That's hopefully what conferences like this are about. Let me just say a few words about ADB's youth initiative. This was started in March 2013, and it's a formalized network and CSO to involve youth in youth-related organizations and ADB operations. Why is this important for Asia Pacific? 60% of the world's youth, or about 750 million people between 15 and 24 years, live in Asia. This is a huge resource that we need to support, encourage, and invest in. And everybody here today is contributing to that, and I applaud that. And especially in the water sector, I think this is critical to us making some real change. The Youth Network has had 40 events in 8 countries and has over 4,000 members in 33 countries this year, and is working on a couple of initiatives related to WASH. This is ending the open defecation, or an open defecation-free Asia is one of the initiatives that they've been working on. They've been partnering with other NGOs. Here in Nepal, one that's working on microfinance and low-income credit. And they also have WASH initiatives that hopefully we can share today. So let me just end this, that mobilizing youth is incredibly important. And I know from these conferences, youth is many things to many people. Some people are not so youthful, in my opinion, but I don't want to discourage anybody from doing anything or using whatever modality we can get to stimulate action. But really, you know, it's from children to teenagers to, I would like to think, anybody with a youthful attitude looking for innovation that can make a difference. Let me quote, this is relevant to Asia, Ban Ki-moon, who said, "Urbanization brings opportunities for more efficient water management and improved access to drinking water and sanitation. At the same time, problems are often magnified in cities and currently outpacing our ability to devise solutions." So today, hopefully we can go forward, devise some solutions, and provide some constructive input into the SDG debate that will be coming in the next year. Anyway, thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Tom. We look forward also for you hosting a table and bringing the outcomes to the panel. So there will be time for questions then. Tom will be with us throughout the session. But I have some questions on my own. First of all, a request to all of those of you in the room that are using social media, please hashtag WWWEEK for any questions or experiences that you would like to share. And this is especially also for those following the live stream. This is one way that you can engage with the people here in the room. So you have been sitting down for a little while now. I'll just try to do a very quick morning exercise with you, and also to see basically who's in the audience. So if you can, please stand up. We'll do this very quickly, so be on your toes, okay? Okay, so sit down. Those of you who live in Sweden. Okay, sit down. All of you who consider yourself youth. And all those of you who consider yourselves seniors, you can sit down. Okay. And I was going to ask if you don't feel like neither, you could sit down, but I mean, you're all seated already. So you're all aware if you're a senior or junior. So great. And just a quick hand-raising exercise to get the blood going out to the fingers as well. Who washed your hands with soap today? Very good. Now, our next speaker is Praveen Rokhaya. He's taking part in coordinating the Budapest Youth Statement. That's sort of the point of departure for this session. He will present to you the different youth initiatives in which you can get involved in, and also provide a bit of a background on the youth role in the post-2015 development agenda. Please, Praveen.
Good morning. Isn't it a young professional? Nobody says good morning. Louder. Okay. I'm Praveen Rokhaya. I'm from Nepal. I'm an advisor in Water Youth Network. Today I'm going to talk about the involvement of young people in the water sector. So what has been really been done and what is really happening in different parts of the world and how we are trying to contribute into the larger water goal. If you see the major youth empowering processes, then you can see there are global policy dialogues, there are technical conferences, and there are water weeks that the young people can participate. The global policy dialogues, they are focused on having youth voice in decision-making processes. And if you see the technical conference, then they are more focused on giving the technical skills, for instance, wastewater treatment or drinking water. And if you see the water weeks, they are more focused on networking. Thank you. Networking and outreach, and they're also more focused on the professional development of the young people. And if you see how they are happening, then the global policy dialogues, they happen very rarely, but the technical conference, they happen more often. And the World Water Weeks, they happen annually or biannually. And if you see the different level of youth involvement, then you can see at global level, as I mentioned already, it's more advocacy, more about policy dialogues and youth participation. And they make a lot of youth statements, a lot of visions, a lot of call for actions. At regional scale, they talk more about the regional priorities, cooperation in the region, and how the people can work together. And there are different organizations that are supporting this kind of activities. At local scale, they are talking more about the grassroots actions, more about the small projects that they do it. But these local actions, they happen in a very small scale. And there are a lot of NGOs and INGOs that support the local action. If you see the regional water youth profile, then you can see in Asia, in terms of young people, there is a comparatively very strong regional presence. There are regional networks like Asia Pacific Youth Parliament for Water, and SCIEN and CN, supported by UNEP. And they also had made a lot of statements and declarations, so this is kind of stronger. In Europe, also, they have a very good platform, but they have a limited visibility. But they have the presence of larger global networks, like All Youth Parliament for Water or Youth Diplomacy. In Africa, they have amazing works, but they are more local scale, but they don't really have their own regional network. So this is also one of the reasons they lose the bargaining power. But they do have a presence of a lot of big youth organizations. So they have a regional representative in Africa, even at national level, but they don't have their own regional network. In North America, there are a lot of youth networks, but they are more localized and more specialized. So there are even youth networks for water governance only, or for Nexus. And compared to other regions, they have more access to resources and assistance. In Latin America, yet there is no strong regional network, but there is something is happening, and there is some initiation. UNEP office in Panama is pushing for it, and there is one organization, Movimiento Aqua y Juventud, and they are also working to have more regional organization. So if I have to summarize it, so what does the youth water sector has? There's increased recognition of young people as a development partner from the seniors. There's just a lot of regional youth organizations are coming up, a lot of NGOs are being set up. And there's also adequate organizations willing to help the young people like Siwi or Global Water Partnership that would want to work with the young people. And in young people themselves, they have strong motivation and they are very empowered compared to last 20 years. But, so what is the thing that are missing in the youth water sector? There is no continuity of the youth activities. So sometimes what happens is you do one conference in one place, so you invite young people from all over the world and you make one declaration. Then next time you do the same thing. You do another conference, you invite all the people and you make new declaration. So really there is not a kind of continuity. And also youth organizations, they are not really cooperating as they should be. And also there is something missing is sharing and learning from each other because we are doing a lot of things and our failures and success could be a learning for another one. That has started to happen, but not at the extent that we want. And though we have some voices, we still don't have adequate presence in decision-making processes. Just a brief introduction of Water Youth Network. We aim to connect you on water issues. We are a group of young people and professionals that are passionate on water issue. We were established for a continuity of youth actions in 6th World Water Forum, beyond the conference and borders. And what we really aim is to bring together young people and to empower them so that we have a strong and channelized youth voice. What we do, we manage knowledge that already exists so that we don't repeat again and again. We connect, communicate, and empower young people. And we also advocate for their involvement in decision-making processes. A quick summary of our involvements. So we do a lot of conferences, and we provide a lot of platforms for young people to speak up, not only with the seniors, but also to talk to each other and then set up their priorities and then contribute for the larger water goal. I want to get you back to the Budapest Water Summit. What we are trying to really do now is, instead of doing the same thing again and again, in this conference, we want to build up on what has already been done. So in Budapest Water Summit, it was one of the interesting and most amazing youth conference, and we want to build on Budapest. It was very interesting in a sense that it was not done by one youth organizations. It was a joint initiative of many youth organizations. There was a presence of UN major group of children and youth, World Youth Parliament for Water, World Water Council youth delegates, youth diplomacy, international water associations, all the youth organizations, they come together and they make a joint statement and they identify their priorities and what should be done in terms of actions. So it would be very nice to build on that. And there were 5 themes on the youth forum. So the universal access to water and sanitation, IWRM in 21st century, good water governance, green economy for blue water, and investment and financing on the water and sanitation. So what we are going to do is we are going to focus on 3 of these things in this conference because they are relevant to our theme. That is universal access, the one that are highlighted on the yellow. In universal access to water and sanitation, we recommend the following actions. So we say we have to prioritize the access for children and young people. We need to encourage youth-led innovations in water sector. We have to use the local resources and materials for sustainable. And we need to have alternative pricing so that the people that uses less water pay less and the people that uses more water pays more. In governance, we talk about the inclusion of young people in high-level decision-making processes so that they can have their own voice. To financially support the youth-led initiatives through scholarships, through internships, or small grants. And also to have a permanent youth desks in major global decision-making bodies. And the final one, what we recommended was to have a sustainable cost recovery strategies to promote youth entrepreneurship in water sector and to have a diversified support and credit also to give more finances for young people when they want to do something entrepreneurship in water sector. To conclude, in Budapest, there were 100 young people from all across the globe, and many more, they contributed online to the statement. And they already acknowledged their potentiality and their responsibility, and they committed themselves to contribute to the water goal through their energy, creativity, and enthusiasm. So today, what we are going to do is we are going to build up on that, and we take it a step further. So today we are going to discuss on concrete actions and success indicators. And one thing that I want to say that is the Professor John Besko, he mentioned that we have done amazing things in the last 30 years. We have done it. And if you see the status of water sector, then maybe it's 90%. So if you see the figure, 90% is amazing. But if you see consider the 10% that we haven't reached, then it's 780 million people. It's a large population. In sanitation, it's the same. It's 2.5 billion people, they don't have access to sanitation. So, and I think as young people, I think that is completely unacceptable that there are people that don't have access to water and sanitation that is so basic. And one more thing I want to say that the professor mentioned that the most of the things is happening through the government. But there are places where the government cannot work, such as informal settlements, slum areas. Their government cannot go because it's a policy issue, because they are living already illegally there, so government cannot do a service there. Private sector don't want to go there. The reason is they don't know when the government will just remove them from that place, so they don't want to do a lot of investment in these places. So something needs to be done. So one of the things that we are focusing on in this conference is to think what can be done for the people that live in such contexts where you don't have support from government or private sector. Then what can we do as a youth, as a part of a larger community? And one final thing I want to say is that it's not also a debate of young people and seniors. We don't have a separate water goal for seniors or a separate water goal for young people. We have a one water goal, but we have a shared responsibility. And as young people, we make up the most of the population, so our role should be even larger. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prabin. I think that was a very good overview of the document and reinvigorating and to putting us on the path of the roundtable discussions. And to explain this exercise, I'd like to introduce Hector Nava. He is a student active in the Water Youth Network, and he'll take us through this part of the session. Thank you.
So we're going to get some work done, finally. First of all, it's going to be a roundtable discussion, and that's different from the typical day-to-day chit-chat. So we're not going to talk to the same things to the same people. So please look around the table. And either all your friends, please reshuffle. Singapore. And as well, look around. Either all your same age, please. As well, like, let's do a little reshuffle. And if you're like really experienced and you're like alone, Mr. Panela, please as well, reshuffle. So just quickly, guys from Singapore, maybe there's like 5 spaces here, 2 there. Guys from Singapore. And the rest, you know, if you're like 20 in one table, maybe as well you can join some other tables. Just really quick. Yes, reshuffling actually means standing up, walking to the next table. Just a little bit, you know. And the quicker we reshuffle, the quickly we're going to have some break. Yes. Guys, do you mind like 5 of you go to that table, for example? Come on, guys. We're not that old. Well, we reshuffle at least something. So I'm going to be around. I'm going to be moderating this roundtable discussion. So please, if you have any questions or anything, just raise your hand, and we're going to help you out. So you're wondering why you have these papers in your tables and why you have these thematics. First of all, you're divided in 3 thematics: governance, finance, and participation. So just to have a common framework, governance means all the political activities, all the policy makings, all the rules that can enable things to happen. Finance is just money. That's more simple. You know, what money can do, what money can buy, and what can actually be achieved for that. And participation is the social involvement. what youth can do, what actually the people and societies can do, meaning NGOs, civil society, so you can have that in mind. So, first I want to do a little brainstorm. Please, there's some post-its on the table. Everyone has pens because they're free in this conference. So we want to write down the challenges or like problems in informal settlements. If you haven't been there, doesn't matter. So I want please take the time and everyone write one or two challenges for the informal settlements. After that, you're gonna put in the middle of the table all the little post-it with the challenges. And the table host is gonna actually read them out loud to the table. So we have a nice pool of challenges. I think I'm gonna get to the stage. From then on, you can actually add more. You know, the more challenges, the better discussion it is. And if they repeat it, that's good. That means that's the common denominator of the table. So the table host is gonna pile them up. So as well, I'm gonna guide you to the price, so don't worry. So as I mentioned to the host, and as well, when you see other ideas, you can add more, you know, and it can be as random as they are. That's why it's brainstorming, so please feel free. And then, when you get your list of challenges, we're gonna try to get some actions. Which actions to take to solve those problems. So, you're gonna know your table by now. So if the post-it works better, you do the post-its, you know, you're just gonna talk about each other. And then you're gonna decide among each other in 3 solutions with success indicators. So that's when actually the discussion has to start, and please, you know, speak out loud. That's the beauty of conference. You just can make your opinion and actually start the discussion. From there, when you actually get your 3 actions with success indicators, you're gonna expand on the success indicators because most likely there's more than one. And as an example, you're gonna write down informal settlements. One of the biggest challenges is, you know, is informal. There's no main infrastructure, so they don't have pipelines or sewage. So what actions? I'm gonna focus in water supply because that's water studies, you know. So I think water is there, but the quality. So we're gonna implement a low-cost point treatment of, let's say, filters. And the indicator can be the number of filters sold in the houses. And you're gonna have a lot of them. And later on, when you go to the next step, you can think, but hold on, do the number of filters, it actually measure if it's working? Because, you know, the filter cannot run forever, so you know, might think, you know, but my point is not sell filters, it's to improve the quality of life of the community. So another maybe success indicator can be the health of the community, especially in infants. And if the filters, they're like for 6 months, so it might be wise to see if the replenishments for the filters are sold every 6 months, so you know like they're working. So I'm not gonna give you more tips. I'm gonna please let you work with your table host. And actually now the actual important rules is take advantage of their experience. Someone, either yourself or everyone else, paid a considerable amount of money for you to be here. So you're in a world conference of water, where everyone gets together. So please, just take advantage. You can now talk. We have nice round tables, and now you have the time and you're here. So take the most out of it. And always with respect, but doesn't mean you need to be just shy. Just say your opinion and everything, but of course with respect. And maybe the most important is have fun and don't stress. And here are the little steps you need to take. So please go ahead. I'm gonna be around if any questions or anything. And I'm gonna let you know how are the times and everything, so where you have to be. So please, go on. You wanna join another table or? Just join another table. We're short for a little bit. So you can get, yeah, you can get in that table. So we're starting now. Please, you can move closer. Don't be afraid. There's a lot of space available in the front as well. You can have a closer look. And we're going to start shortly with the panel discussion. So please, everyone, have a seat. And if you can, just come closer. Thanks. So we actually, shortly and briefly, we revise all the solutions based from this really fruitful panel discussion. And of course, it's impossible to capture everything in a short time, but we split it into three: governance, finance, and participation. And each one of the table hosts is going to explain briefly about it, and that's going to be the base for the first part of the panel discussion. So first, I'm going to call Rosemary.
Hi. We were talking about participation, and the really good thing was that we really looked at closely to ourselves. So we wanted to find solutions and actions that actually we could do. And we had three main issues. It's understanding the issue, and not only for researchers, young professionals, and people active in the region, or active in the science, but also people from the informal settlements. And the next one was raising awareness on the issue. Sometimes we felt that in the discussion we didn't know enough about the issue. So what we really want is to understand the situation and see what young people experience in these informal settlements, and also to listen to their ideas and what are their solutions. So in order to have their solutions, they should know what the issue is, and we should know it as well. And the third point was education. So you know what the issue is, and maybe there are solutions, and then we should educate ourselves and people in these informal settlements on what can be done. For instance, simply washing your hands after you've been to the toilet. And there were actually really many ideas, but I want to explain three. There is an idea of making an app, and actually, Nishta, you did a really good job on explaining it, and actually I think she's going to launch it very soon. The idea is that there are so many phones. People have more phones than toilets, and internet connectivity is high and growing. It's not everywhere, but we know that the connectivity is rising, so let's make sure we use that now, that opportunity. So we can have apps we can develop together with local organizations and people, and also with industries, to make sure that we get information for researchers and to educate people in informal settlements what they can do. Another thing is that we think also in participation is really important to break taboos. So we were actually discussing poop, menstrual health, and how we as young people can talk about it. Because I think, and we thought that it would be easier for us to talk about these issues and make sure that young children who are just learning about the issue are not ashamed to talk about how to use a toilet. Where is my toilet? If there is no toilet, where do I go? What do we do with the poop? So that's what we wanted to address as well. And a really important issue is to start working with NGOs. And I think in the discussion, we took the advice of John Briscoe at heart to talk with NGOs and local people and not to develop something ourselves anew, but see what is being done and see how we can strengthen it. So one of the ideas was to work with communities to make community plans based on their needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. Great insights to set up a panel discussion. Next, representing Africa, I'm going to call Kevin. He's going to explain briefly the financial aspects of the solutions we found today. The table is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. From the group discussions that we had very many ideas, but we zeroed into 3, which I'm going to take you through in a short while. So, number 1, the informal sector is a low-income areas, and most of these people don't have access to banks. So, the use of promotion of microfinance and crowdfunding was suggested as a very good idea, and it has also been proven to work very well in countries like Bangladesh, where the table banking has just taken off, and we are having bigger banks, for example, in Kenya, that are coming up, taking up microfinance and offering these services to the unbankable. So number 2 is organizing social pressure for funding. So this is in terms of having community organizations that are able to come up with innovative ideas and then compete on global platforms for funding. For example, we've been seeing a lot of innovative projects throughout the week here, and some of them are really came up from noble innovative ideas from informal settlements. Number 3 is a program for technical and financial mentorship for young entrepreneurs. So basically what we're saying is that young people really have the ideas and they just need the platform. So for example, the biggest problem that young people have is lack of jobs. But you need, for you to get the job as well, you're being told you need experience. So what happens if you don't, you want a job, they need experience, you can't get the experience without the job. So young people, what they want is the technical and financial mentorship. So in terms of indicators, for number 1, for microfinance, the number, if we're able to implement these 3 ideas, we're going to increase the number of sustainably funded projects. Number 2 is increased participation of financial institutions in local meetings. And the last but not least is the number of mentorship programs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. And last but not least, I'm going to call Melis from France. He's going to briefly explain the last section of governance.
Thank you. Sorry. So we had quite a bit of a challenge when we started because we had the topic of governance. And I think policy making is a bit difficult when you're not part of a minister, when you're not a parliamentarian. So we really thought about it, and we decided to take an approach of support rather than opposition. So we built our action under 3 frameworks. So first, to act as a bridge, because we recognize the importance of cultural difference towards science, for example. We have different religion, we have different myth, and secondly, as a local governance system. So we believe that youth has particular links with communities, and we shall act as a platform to enhance mutual understanding. The second idea was about setting the agenda. So first, the idea to raise awareness, first on the challenge that all of us know for like open defecation or even the pollution for farming, but that are not necessarily known. And we believe that if people on a more local level get more awareness on this, they will push themselves into the public agenda. And the second idea was to enhance the access to information, to public auditing, and to access to what are people's rights. And finally, on this setting agenda topic, to support the local public policymakers by sharing the best practice and showing them that there is actually opportunities, especially in sanitation. When we think about energy, when we think about farming, there is use to it. So that might convince them. And the last but not least point was to facilitate the reliability and coverage. We all know that youth, like it has been mentioned before, has these facilities with phone, with apps. So we believe that there were opportunity
to use apps to show when there's a source of water, to map it somewhere in our everyday life, to facilitate the public local sector work in terms of where there's a source of water, what is the level of the water, what is the quality, so to inform in all of this, and but also for the sanitation infrastructures to show if there's needs to improve it, and it has been degraded in the last years. So that was our governance topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Melis. And now with this background and experience from the roundtable, we're going to actually start upon discussion. So I'm going to have the honor to call Mary and Ellen to start with the questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for your hard work in these roundtable discussions. Thank you to our panelists who have also helped sharing some of the tables. And to discuss these action points that were presented by Kevin, Melis, and Rosemary, we would like to relate it to the overall thematics that we've had on governance, participation, and financing. So we have this very good panel of youth and senior experts. And moderating this panel is Marie. Marie, you're a student of sustainable urban sanitation in Norway and also an active member of in the Water Youth Network. And you're also an ambassador for the International Water Week in Amsterdam. You fire away.
Is this on? Great. The reason why we have the panel here is a lot of them have experience and knowledge within a lot of these actions we talked about. So we really like a lot of you to know. Oh yeah, sorry? No, it's fine. It's fine like this, yeah. To try to comment on these actions and talk about how it can be realistic or less realistic, or if you have maybe some experiences and examples on how it worked, maybe failures, successes, or maybe if you don't have any experiences, it shows it's more innovative, which is also interesting. But firstly, because you're 8 of you, can all of you just say your name, where you're from, and maybe one sentence about your experience, just briefly, at least your name and where you're from, to give an overview to the audience, please. Just there.
Hi, my name is Nishtha. I'm a PhD student with the National University of Singapore. Short background, I have my bachelor's in chemical engineering, master's in hydraulic engineering and water resource management, and I'm currently a student of the Civil Environmental Engineering School of NUS. I have worked for about a year with Professor Asid Biswas. I'm sure if you know him. I worked as his research associate at the Institute of Water Policy at the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy.
Hello, my name is Moa Kortorbius, and I work for the UNDP Water Governance Facility at CIWI. I work there as a program officer, and I have within my portfolio mainly worked with indigenous peoples, knowledge management, and I'm the gender focal point for CIWI. Regional-wise, I work mainly towards Latin America and Central America.
Good morning, I'm Bart de Vos, I'm from Belgium. I'm a chair of the World Youth Parliament for Water, which many of you undoubtedly know from previous editions at the Stockholm Water Week. I'm also a board member of the International Secretariat for Water, and my occupation and daily life is a student. I'm still a student, and my study is international law. I'm now going to the last year of my master in international law, and I'm also doing some consultancy jobs.
Good morning, my name is Michael Fields, and I am the director of Xylem's Corporate Responsibility and Social Investment Program. As many of you may know, Xylem is a water solutions company based in New York, but we are in over 150 countries around the world. And basically the role of our investment program is to work with NGOs and nonprofits to bring sustainable water solutions to schools and communities around the world.
Good morning, I'm Ponce Samaniego, Lead Youth Coordinator for Asian Development Bank's Youth Initiative, whose activities Tom briefly mentioned earlier.
Hi, thank you very much. As you know, I'm Tom Pinella. I work with Asian Development Bank, currently working in Central Asia, based in Tashkent. Previously was in Jakarta, and then Manila before that, and World Bank before that. So have worked mainly throughout Asia, working on water resource issues.
My name is Joanna Blossner, and I am here representing the National Council of Swedish Youth Organizations. And this year I am the Swedish youth representative to the United Nations General Assembly.
Thanks. My name is Nikolai Schaaf. I work for Swedish Waterhouse. It's a department at CV, where we work mainly with Swedish actors and try to build networks within the Swedish community related to international water issues. In my background, originally as a marine biologist, is more in international biodiversity and climate negotiations, and before I joined CV, I worked as a policy advisor in the German parliament for biodiversity policy.
Thank you very much. If we start with the participation action points and the indicators of success, maybe perhaps Nishta and Mua will comment a bit. You're the two people who have most field experience and maybe also most of the relevant background for this. Do you have any comments or experiences that you would like to share? Start with understanding the issue. If we start with that one. And
yes. The question of indicators is always very difficult. It's a very complex issue of deciding what you want to measure and how you do that best, and to make sure that these correspond. I would say that, sorry for turning around like this. I would say that on a general level, whenever you want to measure the impact of something that you have, of an activity that you have had, or awareness raising program that you have had, to measure the intensity of whatever you have implemented is very difficult. And I think that the indicators that have been chosen will be very difficult to actually measure. I think that you can make different types of studies, and you can go out and do surveys, but you have to really define the issue. Is it talking about taboos? You have to define which taboo you are looking for, and you have to look into that specific cultural context, because taboos can look very different from different cultural contexts. And you have to be aware that people talking about taboo might not actually mean that there is a change within that context towards that taboo. It could be discussed, but if it's not discussed in a progressive way, or in a way that implies a change in mentality, then just having people talking about it might not be sufficiently to actually measure what you want, the change that you want to implement.
Moa, you have worked extensively with indigenous people and women and children, and of course experienced a lot of taboos that have been rooted in those communities. But do you see that there's a specific role for youth in trying to break those taboos? And how would you like to expand on that, and what are the actions that we might be able to promote in doing that?
We had a very interesting discussion at our table that reflected partly on this, and I would say that to provide platforms for especially marginalized groups such as indigenous peoples, which often have much less access to water and sanitation than other parts of society and are overrepresented among the poor, to provide platforms for these groups in general, and it's not only indigenous people, it can be people with disabilities, it can be people with certain types of diseases which are very stigmatized, or women in many cases, or costs, or to provide platforms where they can come to speak for themselves and say what their priorities are, what their needs are, is vital. And I think that as youth, we are very passionate, and we want to drive for change, and we want to make change. And I think that a very important part of the youth's but what we can bring to the table is to actually really have solidarity with these marginalized and poor groups, which have not, I mean, even within countries that have met the water target, the MDG water target, there are still great disparities, and these are within these marginalized, socially and economically marginalized groups, and we really need to make sure that whatever policies or programs or issues that we are working with really reach the poorest of the poor. And I think here the youth can take a very special stand to work with these issues.
Very good. I think, Nishta, in your group you were actually discussing exactly how youth can use, especially maybe technologies. Would you like to share with us some of those ideas?
Okay. There's a saying that I really like. It says that little knowledge is dangerous knowledge. You know, we have these, when we talk about understanding the issue and raising awareness, you know, sitting here today, when we say that, oh, telling someone to wash their hands, come on, it's just common sense, but it's really not. Like, I remember when we used to work in some parts in rural India, access to water was such a big deal that the moment they got the water, everything else was forgotten. What's the quality? Is it safe or not? The only issue was, okay, I've got the water, so I'm going to drink it. So these actually, even though they seem so broad and they seem so basic, it's actually really a massive problem. And you said about sharing experiences. I've worked in Dharavi. It's one of the biggest slums in Asia. And what we used to do is we would focus on who do we need to disseminate information to. Everyone does not need to know everything. So what we would do is we would teach the women. And once they would know what to do with their water, boil or treat or basic treatment, then it would enable them to keep their families healthy. It would enable them to keep their children healthy and in school. So another thing that we have to do is we have to target who does this awareness reach. We have to probably break the awareness and understanding the issue into a little bit more of subtopics as to who says what. And yeah, awareness is a big deal and we have to care about it. In terms of technology, as you were saying, we spoke at the mobile application. It's more of a personal experience. When we went into these villages, there were no toilets. Everyone had a cell phone. I'm really amazed at the internet connectivity in rural areas. How do they get internet out there? I mean, you've got internet out there, why can't you get other services out there? And so we put up in one of the villages somewhere, I don't remember the state, but we put up an ultrafiltration system for groundwater. We put up the system and we came back home, and of course we don't really go to the village every 2 months or 1 month, we don't live there. So a year later when we went back just to have a look because we were students and we had some time on our hand, we went back and the membrane was mucky. It was muddy and mucky, and the people thought that, okay, the membrane is in place, so I'm getting safe water. Even though we had told someone in the village how to change the membrane and things like that, but the thing was that guy got a job and he went to the city. So he told no one how to change that membrane. So later on, we developed a system in which we give this to a school. We gave this to some high school students, and they would click a picture of the changed membrane, and they would send it to us. So at least we knew something was happening. So that was, I think, we had a very nice, interesting discussion there about mobile technology. And I think information system can really help push things forward. It's simple, it's easy, everyone uses it. It's more about creating a platform. So why not use something we have?
Also look at more projects youth has implemented or been involved with. It's more experiences. I know, Bart, you've been involved with some WASH project at schools. Will you tell a bit more about how you've been involved with that?
Yeah, sure. Well, actually, I mean, Road Youth Parliament for Water, for those who don't know our organization, we have mainly been working on advocacy and awareness raising in the first phase, but later on we also saw the need for more action-oriented interventions on the ground. And actually one of the things we experienced working across the planet is that, I mean, youth participation is trending, and funding for events, youth-related events and advocacy is also increasing. But what we lacked was really funding for concrete interventions, for instance, as to sanitation. So what we have been doing as an intervention, the Road Youth Parliament for Water, with other NGOs, is creating the Young Water Solutions Initiative, which is an initiative aiming at providing funding for young people who have really innovative or concrete youth-led ideas, interventions on the ground for directly increasing access to sanitation or to water. So the real principle of this initiative is to enable young people to take on their role which we have as an agent for change in communities across the planet, and to provide these young people with the means which they need for gaining that first experience in I mean, entrepreneurial interventions. Because the whole idea about this initiative is not to come to financial schemes, for instance, for sanitation services, which are sound and sustainable for a decade, but more to really give this first incentive to young people to themselves intervene on sanitation. And one of the projects which we have successfully been launching with this initiative was in Burkina Faso and Ivory Coast, where we have had a project designed by local young people for providing access to sanitation in a school. This has been implemented over the last months. And I mean, some of the new things in this project is that we have not just gone there to look with the young people on how to install the infrastructure, but we also created a local youth committee in charge of managing the infrastructure, so of managing the whole use of this sanitation services on the long term. Also, they are responsible for the maintenance, and they got a budget for the maintenance. And they are also, maybe most important of all, responsible of disseminating information on how to use, why to use this infrastructure, and on doing constantly awareness raising. So this is just maybe a first example of how we have intervened in the sector very recently.
It'd be interesting to also get some different perspectives there. Michael, you're from Xylem, and you've been working for many years with many different projects and also delivering water and sanitation services on a global level. How do you, as a private company, how do you see how can the role of youth and how can they contribute? How is the role of youth in your business model?
Well, the role of youth is, to Xylem is pretty obvious. It's the youth of today are our future water engineers and people and scientists and biologists and chemists who are going to make a difference. If you look at the water industry itself, the water industry is the average age, I believe, is over 35 years old of water professionals. So there is definitely an opportunity. Some people think it's not the most sexy thing in the world. You know, it's not like working for an Asian development bank or something like that, or working on Wall Street in the U.S. But there is definitely going to be a need, and there is a need for young people in those fields. So when you combine your professional expertise, no matter what you decide, but with what you're learning today as youth and the power that you have, when you combine those two, it's very, very powerful. If you look at the X-Gen and the Millennium generation, all have their strengths and their weaknesses. But I think that one of the strengths of today's youth is that you're very passionate about what you want to do, and you have the tools at your hand. Social technology, social media right now is at its all-time high, and will only get bigger as we grow. Not only for the developed countries, but also for the emerging markets. The comment was made that more people have phones than have toilets. Well, that's true. It's a sad fact, but it is true. So if you look at that as a youth, if you're trying to make a difference, you don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. There are over 20,000 nonprofits and NGOs worldwide that are doing something in water. So when you have 20,000, you have to say, well, some are doing a very good job, which I agree, and some aren't doing the job that they need to be doing. So, you know, my personal opinion is that that 20,000 should probably be maybe about 10,000, because there are organizations that are not providing the services that they need to provide, and you can easily combine with another nonprofit or NGO, combine your strengths to be better. And one great example is Water for People, based out of the US, and One Drop, based out of Canada. They saw a need in India to address the water and sanitation needs in the Shiahar state. Water for People does a very good job on the ground implementing. One of the better organizations to do so. And One Drop is very good at the microfinance aspect. So they combined, and they're making a huge difference. So if you're looking for organizations that are making a difference and you want to help them with your entrepreneurial ideas and your energy, I would suggest into finding those organizations and bringing your ideas to them. Most organizations are supported by private organizations like Xylem, like Pepsi, like Coke. So you ask, well, how can I make a dent into what Coke is doing or what Pepsi is doing? Well, you're all consumers. They listen to their consumers. So if you want to make a difference, if you have good ideas, you need to find a way into Coke or to Pepsi or to Unilever, whoever are market leaders in what they do, and use your power as youth, the leaders of tomorrow, and go to them and say, this is very important, because we're not going to move the needle if we keep things status quo. So youth have the power and the resources to do it. You just need to unleash it and know where to go to do it.
Just a follow-up question on that, Michael. Would you, being from a private entity, would you say that business is better at capitalizing on youth ideas and giving them more space than the public sphere?
It's a difficult question, because I guess it depends on the organization. Xylem as a fairly new company. This is will be our third year. We spun off from a larger corporation, so we are a bit more nimble than most larger organizations. We only have 12,500 employees, worldwide. So implementing new things is a bit more easy than it would be in, say, a Unilever or a Pepsi or a Coke. So we can be. Our reaction to what's going on the ground can be quicker. And we have the resources. We don't have unlimited resources to react or to create programs. So we are, at Xylem, we're very selective as to the types of programs that we can fund. I mean, we would love to fund everything. I would love to have an unlimited budget. I'd be very popular if I did. But since we don't have an unlimited budget, we are very selective. So being selective means to figure out what we want to do as a corporation, and we're water solutions company, so we only invest in water and sanitation solutions, obviously. So we're able to be laser focused, which is helpful. Sometimes in your NGO world, it's all about where's your next lump of funding coming from. So you may be a water organization, but you kind of lose your way because you have 20,000 organizations competing for $1. So how can I be the one that's going to be on top? How can I employ the best ideas and be an entrepreneur, getting the youth support? So there are a lot of organizations that lose their way. That's why the power of the youth comes. It's stay focused, stay true to what you are doing, because if you are, then you're going to be more successful in achieving your goals. So it's a mixed bag. It really depends on what angle you're coming from.
Thank you. Of course, this being a big panel of experts, and you have all been involved in the roundtables discussions, of course, you're welcome to pose any questions at any time. So maybe Rosemary?
Yes, Michael, as you said, for youth it's really important to stay focused and to make change. But as a young person, you know, you're still a young person, and sometimes you're not taken that seriously and just are asked to listen. So you make it sound really easy, and if you talk, I really say, yeah, let's do this. But how can we do this? Do you have any ideas? Like at your company, do you listen more to young people? Do you educate them? Do you?
Yeah, I think that, well, me, myself, I listen to young people because they're much smarter than I am, so I have to listen. So it's really connecting with my colleagues here on the panel, finding people that have experience, and don't get discouraged if the door is closed. I mean, you're going to have more doors closed in your lifetime than you have doors open. So you have to recognize that, you know, just because you're passionate about something doesn't mean that the first person or the first organization that you approach are going to listen. I mean, it's unfortunately that's life. So you have to, you know, your passion will serve you very, very well. So looking for organizations that you're interested in and getting involved, and it's not just on the education level. You know, very, very impressed with the, you know, going to law school and being an engineer and getting your master's. Education is very, very extremely important, but in my eyes, it's traveling and getting your hands dirty and rolling up your sleeves and experiencing what is really going on. For instance, I'm on the jury Stockholm Junior Water Prize, and then one of the case studies was about improving some conditions on the ground in China. It's very hard to say that you're going to improve the conditions in China if you've never been to China, if you've never experienced it. So brilliant ideas are out there, but you need to get out there. You need to travel, and that's where, you know, quite honestly, the youth is another advantage that you have. You have the access to travel, whether you're from the U.S. or you're from Europe. You know, you get out there and travel. It's not all about just being behind a desk. You got to be active, and there are enough organizations like represented up here that you can get involved in. So. Yeah, don't be shy. Contact people. Take our business cards. Even, you know, I'll get back to you, you know, at least within 48 hours.
Great. That's a promise. I'm sure someone will hold you to it. One more question here.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Godwin Chinemerem. I'm from Nigeria. I would like to ask, in a situation where you're a youth, you've got an idea, you want to do something, and you shared it with some other NGO, and you discover that they have a kind of mistrust. They don't believe you're sincere in what you want to do. What do you do about that? I'll take, for example, I have a case study. During my national service, I was posted to a community where people practice open defecation. The sanitation level there was very low. So I saw a dire need to start up a wash club in the school. So I started it in the school. I spoke with the principal, and he gave me a go ahead. I did that. I walked through the classes. I enlightened them. But I discovered I had to scale up the activity that I'm doing because I have to extend to the communities. So I linked up with Rural Water Supply and Sanitation in Bauchi State, Nigeria. So I met them. I said, please, this is the idea I have. I want to do this. What they did was they asked me to come today, I'll go. They asked me to come the next week, I'll go. I just kept wasting my money going down. They didn't give me any concrete response. So what I had to do was to just maintain the low-key approach. I called some other volunteers to help me out. So for now, we are still in schools, but we really hope to scale up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that, Ponce, maybe you can take this question. So if you are a young entrepreneur, if you have a NGO or a very good idea, I mean, what do you do? How do you get the support? And you probably read all of these applications. I mean, what are you looking for?
Well, firstly, I commend that he did stuff. A lot of young people have great ideas, right? And we're always saying that they're not taking it seriously. But I think the main thing is if you do it and you show them, that's the best way for people to take you seriously. And I think that you starting it and you continuing it and you persisting is the best way that these organizations are going to take you seriously. I think it's a matter of finding the right people as well, who you trust and who you think can be champions of your project or of your initiative. For me, who works in a quite conservative organization like Asian Development Bank and quite bureaucratic, it's not easy for more senior people to take you seriously, so showing it is the right way, and then involving a more senior person, initially my colleague Chris Morris, and expanding it to more people like Tom, and making them believers and starting to work with them in their work, in your work, and collaborating, I think is a more concrete way to do it. I think that's getting champions involved who are more senior, who have more access, and who can work with you. So for example, in your case, I think you've contacted these organizations, pinpoint a particular person who you think has the capacity to do things, and at the same time believes in you or is at least interested, and then working with them step by step and making them understand what you do and showing them. I think that's the best way to get support and champions of your project.
Thank you. If you could also go a little bit back to some of there was so many actions suggested earlier, so try to still look a bit at them, especially the one on program for technical and financial mentorship for young entrepreneurs, which is very interesting. And there's some mentorship programs already going on, and I heard often the challenge is to get enough seniors involved. There's a lot of youth. And Tom, do you have any suggestions maybe how we can get more senior people interested in this kind of mentorship things? Or what would it take for you to be more interested in it, for example?
Yeah, thank you very much. I worked on the finance question, and I think this is interesting. First, I want to thank my colleague Michael, and I think it's the first time I've ever heard working for ADB being called sexy, but I'll feel better the rest of the day just with that comment. So thanks for that. I think that is a very good idea, and I know ADB and, like Michael said, a lot of corporations are investing in mentorship programs. But again, it's something that it's just not going to walk along and come up to you. And if you are an entrepreneurial person, you have to look and try and create these opportunities. It's not easy. I think the point that Rose made that you want to do these things, but how do you get people to listen to you, especially when you don't have experience, is difficult. Again, I think I'll come back to what Michael and also John Briscoe made the point. You need to be credible and you need experience for that. And I know in my own career, I did go to the field and I left consulting for a while and, did 2 years of unpaid work with graduate school and all sorts of things. But, I got a PhD, but I also lived in an irrigation system in a village for 1.5 years. So you do need to do these things to get some credibility. It may not seem like it, but if you are a young person, you'll have more time than you'll ever have the rest of your life to do these things. And so do these things, and you won't regret it, even though it may be difficult or financially troubling at the time. I think you'll look back and appreciate it. I've totally evaded the question at this point.
The mentorship.
So anyway, again, I think it's a very good idea. I think on the finance thing, just one last point is, it's very hard kind of from this youth perspective, how do you mobilize resources? I think the social pressure thing is good, and the point that was made about going to private corporations, I think They do have funds available. I also think people like Coke and others do have a changed perspective on social responsibility and also on water management. Many of these firms are totally dependent on water resources, and they're willing to take it seriously. So I think private sector offers a good opportunity, and it doesn't always have to be NGO or whatever for this experience. I'll pass it on to whoever at this point.
Are there any questions on this specific theme? Yeah.
Thanks, Celine. It's a question mainly to Tom, but anyone is free to tackle on. In my experience with from informal settlements, you have a lot of challenges, and sometimes the government doesn't really can enter because it's informal to the infrastructure, and it's politically complicated. And on the other side, you have mainly youth population, because in the poorest countries, the youth population is the biggest. So you have this untapped labor force, and because they don't have resources. So I think it was positive that the government changed from doer to enabler. So enable them to do social entrepreneurship to actually get the service they cannot do to break that gap. So I don't know if you have any experience of how the governments, they just enable the communities to do some grassroots entrepreneurship, little projects to help themselves to do water sanitation.
Again, I think this is where entry of, I mean, if you have a total government failure, I mean, water utilities have failed in many cases to deliver services. I think that's true, but they've also been very successful. Again, if government won't enter that space, private sector won't enter that space. It's one, trying to get the enabling conditions right. So, I mean, I'm a big proponent of private sector and meeting needs and providing solutions with innovation. And community groups can help get into that space to help communities help themselves. I don't want to take the time here, but I think you have to look at all sectors and cross boundaries a bit to get the dialogue going. I mean, I think participation, governance, and financing are not independent activities of one another, that they have to work together.
I just wanted to ask one question. Will there be, like, in the next 5 years or 10 years, that the big banks like ADB or financial sector, they announce that, okay, this % of the money from the ADB will go to the young people or youth organizations? For instance, I heard the ADB together with Bill Gates Foundation is launching sanitation fund. So is there a possibility that the ADB says, okay, you know, maybe of this total money, maybe the 10% of the money will give it to the young people to do the microfinance or entrepreneurship or water-related business? Do you think it is possible in the next 5 or 10 years?
Let me just make one comment, and then I'll let Ponce take it. ADB doesn't give money away. It's that we're a bank. So if we lend it, it goes to a country, and they have to pay us back. Now, we do have some grant funds, but they're very targeted. And they are used for such causes, but I'll let Ponce respond to this.
Yeah. Thank you, Tom. This was asked in, I think, Singapore, and I think by Pravin as well, so I think I have the answer. I think he's referring to the pilot demonstration activity modality, and he's referring to the new trust fund on sanitation that with the Gates Foundation. And the response that we got when we asked this question is that the fund is open to everyone and is very much open to young people to apply. And the program ADB Youth Initiative has been created and started to support youth to access these resources. So rather than saying allocating specific percentages to make sure, or being a bit exclusive in that respect, there's a program that exists to help young people access these resources instead, to provide support on answering how you can access these things, on designing the projects, on getting you connected to the right ADB staff that could help you out. I think that's a good offer.
Thank you. We also had a theme on governance, and we have Johanna on the panel, and I wanted to ask you, what is the role of youth in the SDG process or post 2015 development agenda? Because this is what's kind of framing this session as well. So could you tell us a little bit about what you do and also how the setting works?
This process is really, really special because the process of creating the post-2015 agenda is more inclusive than ever. And not only states negotiate, but the civil society is also invited in the negotiations. And they are represented through 9 different major groups, and one of these groups is the major group for children and youth. And this group is very, very active and visible in the UN, and they work hard to create this new agenda. And they do that through statements. And not only that youth representative present like in person at the meeting can contribute to these statements, but everyone can online. So it's really organized. And the group is also visible and active through campaigns. For example, one campaign is youth less development is useless, for example. So there are need for more representatives, but you can contribute even though you're not there. So for example, UN set up a survey called the My World 2015 survey that last week got over 4 million votes, where you can vote on your priority, which issues you want to be a part of the new agenda, for example.
So what's the messages from the discussions here today that you will be able to bring with you when you go and talk with these people?
A lot of things, and one really important thing, I think, as a youth advocate is youth participation, and the importance of youth in decision-making, the decision-making process there at the meeting, but also being part of the implementation of these programs and international work, and really to make youth be seen as an actor for change and not only like an object in development. And to really work for that NGOs and especially like strengthen youth organizations in countries and get the most out of NGOs and their work.
Very good. Nikolai, when we get these goals, they will have to be implemented, and that's what we've been talking about today, about the actions, about the implementation on the local scale. I mean, how does it actually work? You have this global agenda, these global goals, but the implementation on the ground, especially in the informal settlements, I mean, how are you going to reach that level, and what's the role of youth, again?
Tricky question. It's actually the discussion at our table has been a bit symptomatic for that. I've been at a finance table, and we all the time ended up all at the same time on participation issues and governance issues, on the overarching targets, whatever framework there might be or is already, down to what is actually the local demand, how is the situation in place. And somewhere there in between multinational negotiations and the informal settlement that we hardly have any data about is a national level that is some kind of bottleneck in the implementation. And even if you are in the lucky situation that you live in a somewhat democratic country, it's not guaranteed that this works. And in that way, I think on the one hand, it's extremely interesting to really observe how the SDG process is probably the most transparent and interactive ever on this kind of level, and at the same time, how incredibly abstract it still is for anyone in place and trying to implement a project. And we had a session yesterday about accountability, mainly, or using tools of asset management when it comes to WASH. And I think that was really interesting. How do you hold governments accountable for setting an enabling environment? Is that in the context of directives? Is it legislation? Do you need solid law? Do you need a national strategy? You can do it in whatever context you like. You can do it in whatever legal status you like. Without accountability and then we're back on the finance issue, the adequate budgeting, you won't get anywhere. So on the one hand, you end up in the normal policy wheels. How do you influence legislation? And there, the youth role is nothing special when it comes to water issues, I would say. But that's one quote I like in the Budapest statement very much, is that in the chapter about governance, that the role of young people as vigilant defenders of justice. I think to be aware of that and to say, okay, maybe it's a cliche, but who, if not the youth, can be loud and angry? If you want to lobby, it's classical lobby work. It's annoying, it's frustrating, and it's necessary. So somewhere there in between the practical experience on site and these bloody abstract negotiations, there has to be a channeling of funds and means of implementation.
Very good. I see that we're running out of time, and there's people outside that are hungry, and I'm sure that you are also hungry, but there will be lunch served actually in this room with the next session. And this room will be used for all of the Young Professional Day activities. But speaking of getting jobs, there's also a CV clinic in the exhibition hall. So, I mean, if you have your CV, you might want to have some professional have a look. I'll hand over to Marie to just do the closing.
Just a quick closing. We're running out of time. I wish we had much more time, especially for looking at the actions and getting more ideas from all the young people out here. Maybe two things I want to say. One is the next step from here. One thing is to talk about the actions and success indicator. What we want to do now as youth is to start, okay, how can we implement this and set some time frames. A lot of us here are from Water Youth Network. We will definitely pick up on it. And we're also working a lot on providing continuity between different youth initiatives and different conferences. I also work with the Amsterdam Water Week. I also promise personally we will work on a lot of these actions and keep bringing that further and try to get how we can implement those on a session more on sanitation, but still very relevant. So that's also coming. And yeah, also, so one of the most important points today, I think there's so many ways youth can contribute. It's not just one way. And we've seen some specific examples there, got some inspirations. You can lobby, you can make an app. Everyone has some unique abilities out there, and you can all contribute in some way, especially when you come together in some way. And don't be scared of the closed doors, as Michael emphasized, or get your hands dirty and get out there and get some experience and try different things. And yeah, stay passionate. But also, John Briscoe said, instead of complaining at your government, start working at municipality level and work your way up. There's so many ways to do it. So yeah, thanks again to all the panelists, and yeah, thanks to all of you. Thank you.